Hello! So are you a plucky young marine scientist that needs to know what ecopath is? Well, you're in luck because I made you a video. Here it is! So what is ecopath and why should you care? Humans have exploited nature for resources for time immemorial. As our numbers have grown, we've discovered a limit to the exploitation of nature for our own gain, seeing our fisheries collapse. Overfishing can have a knock-on effect throughout the trophodynamics of a food web, from prey to predators to producers, spanning the entire ecological community. We need fish to survive, but we also need that source of fish to continue providing. We must model the systems we manage and exploit, determining both fish abundance and how much of this abundance needs to remain to prevent collapse. So modeling an entire ecosystem is a difficult task. It's not like you can easily just jump into a lake and count every fish that you see. We do actually have some powerful tools that can do this for us. The program EcoPath with EcoSim can balance ecosystem models using a mass balance approach based on the principle that carbon in is equal to carbon out. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of EcoPath's mathematics behind its modeling. There are three fundamental questions that underpin EcoPath's ecosystem modeling. Firstly, how many organisms do we have in our ecosystem? This is our biomass, or B, which is measured in grams per meter square per each representative group in our food web. Secondly, who is eating whom? This informs the links in our food web, indicating who is producer, predator, and prey. Finally, how often are they eating? This is our consumption, or Q. Then we have some useful ratios. Firstly, we have P on B, which is the ratio between production and biomass. This tells us how much of our biomass is consumed via fishing and natural mortality per year. P on B is equivalent to Z, which is a total mortality, where F is equal to fishing mortality, or catch over biomass, and M is natural mortality. Natural mortality uses an equation invented by the scientist Daniel Pauly whilst working in the Philippines in 1980. This equation is m is equal to k to the power of 0.65 times L infinity to the power of negative 0.278 multiplied by t to the power of 0.463. That's a lot of math, but essentially it calculates the natural mortality rate of fish. Then we have Q on B, which is the ratio between consumption and biomass. This tells us how much biomass each representative group in our trophic food web consumes per year. The equation to calculate Q and B is derived from the paper Palomares and Pauly, 1998. Yet again, Pauly D, but this is rather complex. However, if you have B, your biomass, you can actually solve for Q. So the Q and B ratios can actually be found in past literature and on the site fishbase.org, but this website does have some controversy surrounding its accuracy. EcoPath also uses some other useful parameters. It uses a proportion denominated as ecotrophic efficiency, i.e. the proportion of the total mortality within an ecosystem that is not explained by fishing and predation. This can act as a fudge factor that can help balance our model. Remember, many ecosystems aren't exactly entirely closed and self-sustaining. Organisms can come and go, and a certain proportion of our mortality can go unexplained. Ecotrophic efficiency, or EE, gives the EcoPath model some wiggle room. And finally, EcoPath requires two other parameters. It needs the diet composition of our food web, i.e. who is eating whom and in what quantities. This is in the form of a proportion between 0 and 1, and it is ascertained by gut content analysis, calculated as the proportion of how many kilograms of the prey species is required to feed the predator species. It also needs fishing mortality, or how much fish we are removing from our ecosystem per year in tons per kilometre squared per year. This can be ascertained with counts and samples of biomass at fish markets and on fishing boats. To summarize, the essential parameters required for EcoPath are B, or biomass, P, or production, Q, or consumption, the ratios P on B and Q on B, ecotrophic efficiency, diets, and catches. So how do we use these parameters and actually make a model with EcoPath? EcoPath uses two master equations to create its model, populating it with our parameters. The first equation calculates production, which combines predation, fishery, biomass accumulation, net migration, and other mortality under ecotrophic efficiency. The second calculates consumption, with predation, unassimilated food, i.e. food that's been excreted or ingested, and respiration. To actually do the math, we can just use a spreadsheet that is set up to run these equations based on the parameters that we put in. By running these equations, we can track how carbon moves through our food web. If our ecosystem is mass balanced, the carbon that goes in should equal the carbon that goes out, and if it doesn't, we can adjust our EcoPath model until it does. Finally, we can use our EcoPath model results in EcoSim. EcoSim uses different equations, taking our EcoPath models and placing it into a time dynamic simulation. This can allow us to track changes in our ecosystem's trophodynamics over time rather than just at the one static moment our EcoPath model was made in. So UNSW has made an ecopath model of Smiths Lake in Australia in 2020. We identified the major players and trophodynamics in its food web and used this to create a predicted ecopath model with estimates for our parameters. This predicted model was cross-referenced against one generated from field data that we collected. For example, we used time transects to determine the jellyfish had a biomass of 60 grams per metre squared. This was quite high for Smiths Lake, so we compared this data to data from previous years where jellyfish actually had a lower biomass. We also found evidence for a potential trophic cascade, finding reduced biomass at higher trophic levels. This suggests that the system is actually under pressure. However, ecopath is a model for mass-balanced systems, and Smiths Lake happens to be an ICOL, or an intermittently closed and open lake or lagoon. According to Everett et al. 2007, ICOLs actually rarely reach a steady-state equilibrium. However, their modelling found that Smiths Lake can actually reach a quasi-steady state after being close to the ocean for a long period. So in 2020, Smiths Lake had been shut for 18 months, so it's likely that it was in this quasi-steady state. Additionally, there was a high level of fishing pressure on the lake that may have resulted in the loss of biomass at the top trophic levels. So the fishing pressure and the fact that Smiths Lake hadn't been opened may mean that it has oscillated towards an alternate steady state. However, we do need a time series-based analysis where we have multiple years of ecopath models, more than what we currently have. And this can actually be done with EcoSim. So after experiencing significant losses in fishing yield and problems with illegal fishing activities in the area, that is, dynamite fishing, an ecopath model was made for Dinajon Bank in Bohol, Central Philippines by Bacalso and Wolf in 2014. This is an area that is populated by several small fisheries and a growing population in need of both sustenance and fishing livelihoods, so a model to inform fisheries management was sorely needed. Dinajon Bank has a dearth of historical ecological data, so it was unclear whether these losses were anthropogenic or natural in origin. Thus, the authors created both an ecopath model and conducted geomorphological analyses. What they found was that the deterioration of the ecosystem was unlikely to be geomorphological. It is a highly protected shallow reef. Their ecopath model found a trophic cascade was occurring likely due to the overfishing of the top trophic levels. However, the Dinajon Reef system itself was still quite stable and mass balanced. Whilst fishing activity, illegal or legal, kept the biomasses of the top trophic level groups low, they still predated, even though it was inefficient, on the benthic primary producers and invertebrate zoobenthic groups that formed the lower trophic levels. Also, even within their trophic levels, there was a high level of redundancy of functional groups. So even if we temporarily lost a group from a trophic level, say a top big fish predator, other groups occupying the same trophic level will compensate. Even though Dinajon was found to be stable, they still saw the need for long-term modelling with EcoSim. When they compared Dinajon's yield to other similar Filipino reefs, it was still underperforming. The collective impact of the numerous small-scale fishing operations at Dinajon Bank appear to be having system-wide effects, which may be damaging the overall system if it remained unregulated. They could potentially take this information and use it to develop policies that reduce illegal pirate fishing and properly manage the system for the locals that subsist off of it. I hope ecopath with EcoSim makes a little more sense now, as it is an excellent tool available to all scientists anywhere in this world that wants to understand the flow of carbon in a mass-balanced ecosystem.
Life just gives me lemons, and I don't like lemonade. Sticky situation. Look at this mess I've made.